all for joining me here. And did we sit under our photos? Steve wanted us to sit under our photos.
No.
That's all right. Well, we already broke the rules. This session, everyone on the stage, as Ralph just mentioned, had a story to tell, and they're in the book about the progress they made in IT sustainability. They all are the sustainability IT leads in their businesses, and they've been at this for quite a while. In fact, that's why I invited them up here because, well, compared to...
Didn't say that.
Yeah.
The reason I invited them up here is because we need to talk about what's next. What's coming next on the horizon for sustainable IT and sustainability by IT. And their companies have gone through the first phase pretty successfully and told their stories in the book. The first stage is generating awareness and then getting engagement from people, from the executive commitment level down to actually having practitioners with some dedicated roles toward IT sustainability. And they've moved into the second stage. The second stage is improving your measurement and metrics because it's never perfect, but more importantly, operationalizing the practices and the approaches so that it's not let's do IT and then let's do sustainability over here. It's let's do IT sustainably, and they're making progress in that area. And they had to deal with, like all of you, the unexpected water balloon of AI. Okay. That's probably the wrong metaphor because it involves water wasting. But anyway, the water balloon landed in our laps and exploded, and we have to deal with it on top of everything else. That's why, one reason, this isn't getting easier. And we can talk about the uphill challenges that you're facing in stage 2. But let's move right into looking at what major focus areas that are either new that you're exploring or that have a new emphasis, let's say, or a new priority. And I'd like to start with Katya. Katya, after consulting with NTT Data, you were brought in full-time to lead this sustainable IT transformation as VP and head of the IT Global Sustainability Center of Excellence. So what transitions and scaling efforts are really top of your priority list over the next 12 months right now?
So, so I came in last year, so we're still pretty junior in the journey of transforming IT. And I will say one of the reasons why this is a longer duration is NTT came together in 2024 as one NTT. And so we brought together very large companies, all of their acquisitions, and put them as one entity, which left us with 42 ERPs, 30 CRMs, many LMS systems, 12 Microsoft tenants, and a very complicated IT landscape. And so, when they said, come on in and do sustainability, I really didn't ask the question about, well, what exactly does your landscape, because then perhaps I would have made a different decision. But it's a big challenge. So you're right, last year was all about visibility and understanding what's there. Well, there's a lot there, it was big, and we did a lot of great things. Our first thing was an awareness. So what are we doing this year? That awareness has to continue, right? That is not something that stops. So we created, in partnership with the Carbon Literacy, a training course that I'm very proud of that engages with our employees. So we have almost 200,000 people worldwide. And it consists of workshops. So I actually do these workshops twice a month and engage with my teams from around the world. And on any one call, I may have 6 or 7 countries. And they're talking to me about what they're experiencing with climate change. And I'm talking to them about their roles in the company and what they can think about in helping advance our carbon impact and do better and what they can do in their roles. That doesn't stop, ever, right? And what we saw with AI was this next gen, and we'll get into our next revision later this summer, will include a lot more on AI. So I heard this morning in some discussions as well, don't blame it on the user, right? The use of AI and the growth of emissions and energy, the reality is the users are using it and they need to understand what the impacts are. So that's still a huge focus. And last year we created something called the ICT Carbon Insights, what was called the Carbon Calculator last year. I wanted to see across my IT domain what our emissions were. So I worked very closely with my Chief Sustainability Business Office organization and collaborated on creating that tool. And we got our first insights and went, oh, wow. And that kind of informed the strategy. But for this year, as we advance our strategy, which is devices, the largest, is at 87% of our footprint, we have to advance our insights as well. So big focus on how do we do that for AI. And circularity is a huge focus. We created a material topic in NTT data, so it is important to NTT globally. We're starting with our laptops, because there are hundreds of thousands of those laptops worldwide. And it is, of all the programs, I thought I was gonna get that one down pat, easy, no. It is highly complex, legislation, taxes, how you handle assets in 63 different countries. So this year is all about how do we continue to advance that and advance our e-waste diversion targets.
And the complexity, it's not surprising that end user devices came up as your priority, but we'll talk later too about, the software aspect. It's not just plugging in a device and getting the power out of it, but it's how it's being used and what it's running and how efficient the software was written. So David's the IT sustainability lead at the UK and US energy provider National Grid. So if anyone wants to talk about energy supply, demand, find this gentleman, because he can tell you some things off the record that might surprise you about the build out that's happening right now. But before we talk about that whole thing, just where are your attentions turning to right now, and what's the transition you're making from your initial IT sustainability successes? And you've won awards for these successes.
We have, yeah.
And it's in here, by the way, for sale.
Documented for posterity.
But what are you looking at next?
So we very much focused on reporting, metrics, frameworks, governance. And that was very much IT for IT. What we've been doing this year is kind of recalibrating that to make it more business value focused. So our organisation has some fairly bold commitments when it comes to our responsible business charter. Because of the size of National Grid and the scale at which it does infrastructure, IT, we weren't 80%, right? We were. I'm not going to say immaterial, but it was not on their top 10 list of things to worry about reporting-wise. So we had to make it relevant to them. So we've been translating, our business's goals of bringing energy to life and a clean, fair and affordable energy future, and trying to turn what we've been doing within IT into that business language where they can see the value in what we're doing. So we focus very much on social return on investment around how we dispose of our devices, so through donations instead of through recycling mechanisms, and really aligning to those business outcomes so that we can drive it from the business value point of view as opposed to IT doing it for the sake of IT doing it.
When it was IT for IT, you were looking at the efficiency of your laptops and building different models to maximize that.
Yeah.
And that's
been great. And there was some real improvements from that, but translating it into what the business finds as valuable will mean that this stays embedded. And then that driver is the business saying, this is how we want our IT delivered. So when we're talking to architects, it's not IT nagging IT to do things less terribly. This is how the business expects it to be delivered.
Yep.
So there's education there. We're looking at the procurement process. All of it is having it embedded, but with that business driver and that business lens to provide the emphasis.
And your business emphasis is affordability always, resilience because of days like this.
We like it when the lights stay on. And
security, of course, security, physical and digital. carbon resources, and then of course the public trust. They have to know that you're not screwing up.
Absolutely. We need legitimacy to be able to do what we're doing in the way that we do.
And Helena, you're the head of IT sustainability at Siemens AG, and you have been doing this for quite a while, and that's to say she knew this was important before anyone else, really. And you were doing this at Electrolux. Electrolux has won sustainability awards. Siemens is winning recognition for sustainability. So where Helena goes, change happens. And my question for you is, where is Siemens' focus moving right now, and what does that mean for IT's role in supporting sustainability transformation?
So yes, I think it's very interesting now because at Siemens as a business, we sell hardware, software and also services. And of course we have put a lot of attention on working on sustainable hardware from our whole life cycle. And now what we have to do is to move into software. And that actually comes from two drivers. One is the customers. Our customers are actually starting to ask for footprint for the softwares that we
Internal
sell.
and external? Or?
External, yeah,
Oh,
so customers, yeah. So Team Center, for example, of this type of softwares. It's mostly starting in the Nordics, but it's happening.
Okay.
And then also we have our auditors who are now asking us to report on our scope 311 downstream. So that's actually the sole software products that we put on the market.
What happens to them in the user's hands, the customer's
Yes,
hands?
exactly. So in order to get to that, which is not an easy task to estimate, I know there are other companies doing that, we said, okay, let's start from the beginning when we are now developing softwares as we do internally. So this is something that we are just starting off now, and that's what I see, the coming years, to put in sustainable development practices into our software development.
It's part of the process. It's got to be embedded in the process. It can't be something you do after the software is written, and this needs to be more sustainable.
Yeah, and now we have this one tech company approach, and by that we are actually making a platform for developers. So that's the platform that we're now tailoring with this sustainable software.
Which will make training easier. It's a standardized platform, right?
Yes.
If I can interject, I love that. And I was in a conference yesterday, and I think it was somebody from Amazon, and they were looking at AI and technology because they said there's only one of me, and I said, that's the truth. And so how do you use technology then to replicate the knowledge and experience and get it in the hands? Because writing policies and process documents, and that's interesting, but it's not going to make a change. And training people and having the conversations, that's also really great, but that's not going to advance things quickly. So how do we use technology to replicate ourselves and get things right into people's hands that are driving the processes, right from architecture, to development. So that's awesome.
And these kinds of standard tools that they're just trained to use, and it's second nature. That's what you need sustainability to be second nature. You're also developing an eco label for software.
Yeah, so the same here also, we have the eco label for hardware, and we're actually mimicking this one now for software, and we have a target to kind of do this labeling for our relevant software, so similar to this. So there is a lot of things happening in this software area. It's not easy and so on, but I think that's the way to go, back to what you said about AI and so, where we actually see that there is a bigger footprint now on the digitalization that we are driving. So,
If IT was not a significant part of a company's carbon footprint before AI, it's hard to argue that it's not significant after AI. So that's going to force conversations that you've been trying to have, right? With or without success. We're going to talk about challenges with each of these topics, but let's start with the goals and the actions, and then we can kind of circle back into, well, what about the big headwinds that you're facing on this. So the topic I want to move into now is AI sustainability. So the AI build out and the rush to implement is happening at a cost to the environment, both in energy supply emissions from the consumption of that energy, and let's not forget water. Stakeholders are asking IT, which they should, what IT is doing to mitigate those impacts. And IT needs an answer that has meaningful metrics in it and strategies. And the meaningful metrics might be the hardest part, because you need the ecosystem to collaborate on those metrics. It's not just how many tokens you guys issued and what that translates to in energy. You need to know how the suppliers are processing those tokens and where they're processing them in order to have the right data to guide these answers. In addition, companies are looking at AI as a tool to be directed toward sustainability acceleration, and it can work that way, and there are examples of it working that way. So at the same time, you're trying to say, how do we leverage this, as well as mitigate the issues? David, your company, as an energy provider, is witnessing that build-out and that escalation firsthand.
Yeah.
Let me put some figures up here that you collected just for the UK. No, one back. Okay. There you go. The UK baseline from 2024 and the forecast. This is for data centers, just data centers in 2030.
Yeah, so I've focused in on the UK because the metrics are a lot easier to get transparency on. And all of this is publicly available information. This is not us bubbling the sector or dropping any secrets. But I won't go through the numbers because they're fast. I just want to see over here. But what you'll see is at the moment, energy consumption from data centers, or last year anyway, was forecasted at about 2% of total UK consumption. Current forecasts are saying that's going to be 7%. So from 5 terawatt hours to 22 terawatt hours of consumption by 2030. It's 2.5 years. I keep saying 3, it's not. It's now only 2.5 years until that date. That's a four times growth. We're also trying to roll out infrastructure to connect all the masses of renewables that we're trying to bring onto the grid, whilst also trying to roll out all the connections for these data centers. So as an organisation, National Grid has a huge challenge ahead of us. There aren't going to be any brownouts, don't worry, we're really good at planning all of this out. But it is a huge consideration. It's no longer, data centers are no longer just a niche industry when it comes to UK energy. They're now a key consideration that we have to think about when we're building out our energy infrastructure for countries and regions. So it's quite transformative.
Same thing in the Northeast in the US, so a lot of data centers going up there, and the power grid is in a narrow corridor of states.
Absolutely, and I did try and get figures for the US, Rick, but I wasn't confident in bringing them all together as I am with quoting NESO and DESNES and others in the UK. So yeah, it's a huge challenge. We are doing everything we can to kind of mitigate that, but it's interesting. So
sustainable growth depends on a lot on efficiency, also flexibility, and to make decisions that improve efficiency and flexibility, you need transparency. And you need transparency from your customers.
Absolutely.
In terms of what they're going to need in terms of power. But what can IT do in this environment to be helpful and to help mitigate?
So from some of the conversations we were having earlier this morning, Rick, I think that governance and transparency piece needs to come in. And let's park AI for the moment. The data centers are now a material consideration for our energy sector. 7% of all UK consumption, right? Do we have robust enough regulation around reporting of energy consumption, around forecasting of energy consumption? We could do better in that space, I think, and that would enable us to be able to roll things out quicker. Ironically, we're extensively using AI to assist with the rollout of the additional connections that are needed for data center growth, but also for renewables. So we're able to speed up our connection queues, we're able to speed up the analysis we do on the viability of sites, and even with the reliability of our systems, we're using it to analyse all of our hardware that's out in the fields from a reliability point of view to make our interventions more efficient, to reduce downtime and stuff like that. So whilst there are some considerations, we're also seeing it as an enabler of making National Grid able to do more with less.
Right. And Conti, as a technology provider building AI into products, I'm sure, what does that mean for your sustainability strategy?
So it puts you in a strange position knowing that there's revenue growth targets around selling AI to being in a position where you're trying to slow it down, which you can. So from an IT perspective, our organization is doing a lot around the governance. So we have what's called our global architecture governance process. So all technology now, all AI technology must go through this gate, which is painful by design. And then we're moving to, and I think somebody mentioned this morning, AI control tower to start to really look at the use cases associated with that. In the meantime, we're measuring across our environments. Today, we have visibility to all the applications that are in our cloud using AI, and we've done some really cool analytics around the models. Now we're gonna take that information to our AI organizations to make recommendations about where we do some automation on where prompting goes, what models get used, et cetera, so we can help with that. But it's a race. Now on the other side, I will say, just to pitch my company, I just spent some time in Japan, and it was amazing to watch. We were at an award ceremony, and a lot of the organizations within NTT are using AI to advance biodiversity improvements, to advance improvements to wildlife habitats, to helping elephants traverse through where their ancient trails were, right, through tracking those types of things, to helping farmers, right, in Japan and prevent diseases and all those types of things. So it's an awkward balance, but what IT has to do is put the right governance in, and that is making sure it's balancing the responsible and the ethical and the transparency with the human component centric. How are we upskilling? How are we taking a look at that just transition with the sustainability component, which is the energy and water, let's not forget that one, because that's a huge sore discussion in the US related to water. So IT's role is to get the measurements, figure out how to work with those providers to get those measurements and provide that transparency, and make recommendations on how to continue to use and promote AI in the most sustainable way.
And it is balance, and again, if you can standardize and systematize, it's easier for everyone, even if you're a large global company. Helena, you've made some progress in the last 6 months applying guidelines through AI governance processes, including associating metric with that. So can you tell us something about that, as well as how the company looks at risk around AI and data centers?
Yeah, so I think what you mentioned on the risk, that's quite interesting because of the rise of AI and the importance for the company. That was actually identified very recently as a company risk. So as a corporate company risk, our data centers. So we have now said that internally we have to then look at this risk from energy, water and land usage, our internal data centers.
So it used to be risk and that someone could hack into your data center, or that it could go offline and then you have a spare data center. But that's not the risk we're talking about.
No. So I mean, of course, there are a lot of sustainability risks as corporations have, and now also data center has actually become one of those risks that we have to, at least monitor and see what is happening. So that's interesting. Then on the area of AI, what we've been doing internally in order to try to understand this is that we have for our internal GPT, we have a Siemens GPT, we have been able to evaluate the footprint, the carbon footprint on a monthly basis, and we have then used this SCI, so software carbon intensity measure, and we are using that for AI. So kilogram CO2 per million token. This morning we learned that you should not divide by token. But I mean, this is,
I wouldn't
we-
say
we-
that
we-
is hard and fast.
Yeah.
we've been, trying to find standards. There is no standard. This is something that might become a standard. So we said, okay, let's adapt this. So I'm happy to hear if someone else is doing this.
The
I'm
internal,
happy to discuss.
the internal GPT is running on Siemens hardware, or is it in the
It's
cloud?
running on AWS.
AWS,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. So that's the figures we get from AWS. And we are also now doing the same thing for some of our industrial AIs that
Oh.
we are providing to our customers in order to, see, if we can make them more efficient.
All right, and before we go to the examples of using AI for sustainability, what do you think, when you've got this data, the kilograms, and what do you think you'll be able to do with it? You say, after you've seen patterns in it, and how could IT apply it?
Well, we have actually seen patterns, at least, that we can now monitor, especially on our industrial AIs, because they are much bigger than the internal AIs, and we have spotted them, and then we can go to these teams and talk to them, and show them these figures, and they have actually been able to do some changes, in order to use less carbon is what we see now. We don't see energy yet. So we want to kind of decouple the growth from kind of the usage, of course. We have to start to measure. So I mean, here we are on step 1, so that's the intention.
And in what ways have you been able to roll out AI here in the
Yes.
service of sustainable products?
Yeah, so what we have here, I mean, this is what we see kind of the positive impact of AI, and that's what we believe as a company, as you were just sharing. There are many use cases where you can use AI to apply for a good sustainability use case. So the first one here is actually on data centers. So I mean, we know that AI data centers are using a lot of energy. So here it's actually, we are able to use AI to monitor the cooling and the temperature and the server load, and by that actually being able to lower the energy use by 30%. This is one of the data centers in Estonia.
Okay.
And the same thing you can do for materials by using AI when you are developing products. You can then tweak it in digital twins, and you can reduce the material consumption, etc. And the last one there is on the grid. I'm sure you are much more expert there. But actually, by using the existing grid, if you have capacity, by using AI to balance the load and the demand, then you can actually, we have been able to increase the grid capacity by 30%. So you don't need to kind of upgrade the grid, which is a big project in itself.
30% is good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the big challenges in AI sustainability is the lack of transparency and granularity of consumption data from hyperscalers. And some people are convinced they have this information, they're just not willing to disclose it. They will say they lack information from the model developers to give a full ecosystem picture, but we do need a full ecosystem picture. How are you using Siemens' influence to try to push the hyperscaler transparency issue?
Well, I believe if you are a big company, that's why I love my work that I'm doing, because if you're a good big company, then you can also push suppliers, hopefully. But now, of course, we're in the hands of big suppliers that are also our customers and so forth. But here, for example, with Microsoft, what we have done together with a lot of other companies is that we have pushed for trying to get the co-pilot, also part of the carbon emissions that Microsoft is publishing for the rest of the Azure services.
Oh, right. Like percent renewable and regional information.
So we put the ticket in their system, and there are many companies who we together in a user group who are actually been voting for it. So last one it was top 3. So I don't know, cross fingers that we would get also figures for Copilot. I think many companies are pushing for that.
Can other people jump on that?
Yes,
Okay.
sure, yes.
Another challenge, which we probably don't have time to go into, is just sovereignty efforts. Is it going to be helpful to have AI stack sovereignty in different countries, and or is it going to make your standardization, globalization approach not practical because the data has to reside in certain places and the model has to be resident in certain places, and I don't personally think it's going to make it easier. One more topic I'd like to jump into is circularity. I've often said that circularity is a kind of a low-hanging fruit for IT because you control what happens to these devices. However, that's oversimplifying it because you have challenges like people don't want you to extend the lifespan of their laptop. They want a new laptop like they have at home. Doing asset disposition in Germany with all of your products there, all of your devices there, is not going to work the same way you do it in Texas, let's say. So it's hard to standardize again around that. But Claudia, I know that this has been a challenge for NTT Data. What's your go-to strategy to try to bring continuity and holistic approaches to asset disposition and lifecycle planning, which is the bigger picture?
Yeah, so I mean, the easy part is I'm part of an organization, our operations team that manages our workplace, we'll call it. We're the first people to go through some of my carbon literacy training and just embrace sustainability. So working with them now, this is like part of their mantra. It's not even adding to the work, it's just the way that we work. So the first step was get those operations teams on board. The next step is finding a balance between a global ITAD provider that meets all of the requirements still on your security side, but also from your circularity side. So we've set forth policies on what circularity looks like in NTT, what people have to do, and so we're still in that down select phase. That strategy, though, has to include localization, because where the complexity comes in as a company, IT doesn't own all of the assets, right? And so there's some of at our group level, some of the companies use it, and from an ITAD disposition, sometimes facilities owns the budget for disposition. So that's where it gets really complicated, is how do you find out through all of these regions and all the people that touch the process and get them on board. And the other complicating factor, and I'm sure everybody sees this, is in a lot of cases, people haven't paid for ITAD services, so Uncle Joe's rolled up to the back door, right? We dumped in assets and away they go, and that was great. And now it will cost to do the right thing. And so the overall business case is compelling because we can remarket these things if they're not too old. But how do we get to that specific locality business case level when the financials are owned by multiple people and get to it? So the first is the mindset, and that's easy. It's there across, and I'm very happy to say across our organization, everybody's on board with responsible lifecycle management and waste diversion. But the complexity is how do you reach out into each of those countries where the asset ownership is different and the financial ownership of disposing of those assets. That's where I'm finding complexity. But global ITAD provider is a good place to start.
And David actually has a case study in the book about working with an ITAD that takes the devices, refurbishes them, secures the data, and donates them with support to communities that really need these devices. And in that way, you've created a great story around keeping e-waste down, supporting communities and social sustainability, and helping close the gap of the digital divide. And the third is, it's actually costing you less to dispose of these assets.
Yeah.
So what kind of numbers have you hit so far, and where are you going next with that program?
So our previous model was to provide them to a global ITAM provider who would resell them. And we would take a cut of the profits, which we then use to make a few donations here and there. And we went from donating maybe a couple of hundred laptops from the profits and sales to 100% of the assets that we dispose of now go to these ITAM providers who are charity partners. So we we donated 8,000 devices.
In what time frame?
In a year.
In a year.
So that was all of the assets that would have just been disposed, have now gone to a charity partner whose core goal is to bridge the digital divide. So we've aligned with charity partners in the UK and the US to do this, but it was very much about us aligning with the business again, Rick. So our organisation has some. Well, it does a lot of community outreach.
Sure.
We're paid for by ratepayers and by bill payers, and we want to support the communities that we serve in. And we realised that we had an asset that we were disposing of that still had an incredible amount of residual value, not just in money terms, but in impact terms when it comes to bridging the digital divide. And the digital divide is going to get worse with the adoption of AI.
Yeah, we'll
So
be talking
that
about
gap
that
is
later.
getting wider.
Right.
And that was something that we were quite cognizant of. And the business really sees the value in that as well.
Well,
So,
because again, it's another example of aligning IT sustainability and sustainability by IT with the corporate mission priority, which changes a little bit over time, and you hit that bell with this program, and that put you on the radar in areas where you weren't on the radar.
yeah, absolutely. And the corporate social responsibility team have now taken full credit for this initiative. And
That's all right.
and we have to deliver it every single year.
Yeah, it's all right.
And the reporting
Credit
is
is-
now embedded into our public reporting for our CSR
Excellent.
reporting. So, yeah.
We can share the credit.
But that's a key part, right? So the donations, resells,
Yeah.
resells to employees, all of that is part of the circularity strategy and then the proper disposal.
And we're going to use it to drive that reuse piece. So we're moving away from the user doesn't own it. They are a custodian of the device. The ratepayers bought it, you're using it, and we will be donating it at the end of its life. So would you please mind awfully not pouring coffee on
Be
it,
careful.
because you are a
Matching it
custodian.
with your
Yeah, yeah.
things and the sticker.
That's
Yeah,
an interesting way to put it.
Eating food over it. So
Yeah.
you're a custodian until we give it to a very worthy cause.
And at the same time, circularity requires internal circularity too. So
Yep.
refurbished machines, moving to different level users perhaps.
Absolutely.
You're gonna pursue that.
Yeah, we are. We've just gone through a retendering, so I have the choice of reintroducing that to a new vendor.
And if you show people the carbon they're saving by keeping that thing an extra year or taking a refurb model, they get credit for that carbon savings. They'll feel better about it. They don't care that it saves you money. But if you show them that it saves the carbon in their environment that they live.
Well, we've done surveys with Circular Computing and Atos and others, and the surveys show that if you explain the reason, i.e. the carbon impact, 75% of people are very reasonable and would say, well, yeah, of course I'll extend the life of the device because I don't want to cause any unnecessary impact.
And reversely, Gardner's done this studies where people have been primed out, I don't want a refurbished device,
Okay.
but they show now, well, I think 88% of people will take refurbished device, understanding the sustainability benefits.
Right. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. These people are available to discuss any of these issues with you. If you have follow-up questions, please seek them out. They're here as a brain trust for your benefit and each other's. So that want to hear from you too. But thank you so much, David, Katya, Helena, and I wish we had more time, but we've got an awesome session coming up next, so don't go anywhere.